On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by their partner, and a report of child abuse is made every 10 seconds. But there are types of abuse that can have longer lasting damage than physical abuse. I'm talking about verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. 1 in 14 children have experienced emotional abuse by a parent or guardian. 48.8% of men and 44.4% of women have experienced psychological abuse. Name-calling, yelling and screaming, intentionally embarrassing, harshly judging or criticizing, being controlling, isolating, making someone feel unimportant or guilty, stalking, threatening, and many more are all examples of verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. These types of abuse can cause depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, emotional instability, commitment and trust issues, and a lack of empathy. They can also lead to substance abuse, suicide, inappropriate relationships, insomnia, and PTSD. I know somebody who has had personal experience with these types of abuse. Her name is Addie. When Addie was 3, her mother met Steve. Since Addie had no father in her life, Steve filled that hole. Addie loved Steve and continued to love him for many years after Steve became abusive to Addie and her family. When Addie was younger, she didn't understand what was happening when Steve hit her mother or her 2 older brothers. Why Steve would say the hurtful things he did to Addie and her family, or why Steve and her mother fought and screamed all the time. But especially, Addie didn't understand why her mother had changed so much. As Addie got older, she began to realize that Steve was nothing but a controlling bully who was never going to change, that her mother was never going to leave Steve, no matter how many times he hurt her and her kids, no matter how many times he cheated, and no matter how many times Addie pleaded. Eventually, Addie decided that she was no longer going to forgive him, and she hardened her heart to him. Still, Steve left lasting marks on her, like when he told her she would amount to nothing, or how he handed her a pair of scissors after she expressed wanting to die. Addie is still affected by these years of abuse. She suffers from insomnia, has emotional instability, commitment and trust issues, and a lack of empathy. Addie also can't bring herself to date or truly like anyone. However, many people turn out to be much worse than Addie. They become substance abusers and get involved in abusive relationships, and many commit suicide. There are places, such as the Avalon Center in Crossville, Tennessee, that can get you help with these types of abuse. If you are experiencing verbal, emotional, or psychological abuse, I urge you to seek help.
Created using Powtoon.